Okay, guys, we're gonna see how this goes. I don't think I have ever lectured into absolute void before, so I hope I don't go on for too long. I don't think that you guys are gonna be able to handle listening to me for that long. So um, I decided to start our new online class by talking about media performance using social media. And what that encompasses is I'm going to be talking about how you from home can best set yourself up for making the most successful looking videos. And my goal there being that, without a studio space and professional lighting, how can we still have your videos have that professional look? So, to begin, there's 5 elements that I've really broken this lecture down into. The first is the set itself. The second will be the lighting. The third will be video equipment. The fifth will be audio equipment. And the last will be framing and aesthetics. And of course, I got an email right in the middle of this lecture because obviously I'm going to have something go wrong. I'm not going to start over though, because this is the 4th time I've started over. And I hope that you can see the humor in that. Okay, so we're going to talk about set lighting, video equipment, audio equipment, and framing and aesthetics. At the very end, I also tacked on the different types of services that you can use to stream your videos. So to begin, you're going to want to establish a space, if you can, to use as your set, right? So what makes a professional set different from being at home? Well, besides the obvious, and I'll pause so that you can get all your snarky comments out. Besides the obvious, the main points of a professional studio are that you're going to be able to effectively have good lighting. You're going to have a soundproofed and you're going to have space that is good for acoustics. You have a place to set up a background. You've considered what your foreground is going to look like. And you've considered the aesthetics of your shots. So let's break this down a little bit. And I'm going to talk for a little bit so you can let your eyes wander. So first, you want to pick a place that already has good natural lighting. Hopefully it's not going to be too affected by the weather outside, but even if it's gloomy, you still want to pick a place that's going to have good-ish natural lighting. And the reason for that is that natural lighting creates this sort of glow that's going to work well. And then you won't rely as heavily on additional auxiliary lighting. The second thing you want to consider is the space that you're going to be taking up, right? Your bathroom might have really good acoustics for singing when you're in the shower, but it will also have an echo, and that might not work as well with the type of microphone you're going to be using. Or your bathroom might work really well. And you know what? Guess what? If you have good lighting in your bathroom and you have good lighting and good acoustics in that space, you can set up your bathroom to not look like a bathroom. And I will come back and talk about that in a little bit. And then speaking of your bathroom, you want to set up your background, right? So in some cases, it might be good to have just a blank wall behind you. And in other cases, you might want to think about what is your channel about, and can you use your background as a way to build your authority on that subject. So what does that mean? For example, if you are someone who is going to be talking about esports on your channel, then how can you use your background to your advantage to advertise information about yourself, like that you know something about esports and therefore have a reason to be talking about esports and therefore have some authority on the subject, right? So I'm going to use Neil as an example briefly. Neil knows a lot about the process of making tea, and he aims to make his channel potentially about the process of making tea and about tea. So if he set up various paraphernalia that he uses to make tea in the background behind him, then somebody who is watching the video might scan the background and see that he has the correct equipment, and therefore he might know what he is talking about. You can also play with the foreground in the same way. For example, if there's something specific you're going to be talking about in a given video, you can have it laid out in front of you at the beginning so that your audience can already see maybe what the theme of the video is going to be. And finally, you should consider the aesthetics of your set. Now, we're going to come back and talk about the aesthetics of your frame and the shot. But what I want you to think about when you're setting up your set and the space where you're going to be recording is whether or not it's going to make your shot seem imbalanced, whether or not you're using the rule of thirds well, whether or not the colors are in any way helping or hurting you. So really, really take a minute, maybe take a photo, maybe record a sample video of yourself just hanging out in the space you intend to use, and go back and look at the video and ask yourself, what can I do to make this space better? Now, obviously, I understand that all of you are now at home, and in some cases, you might be in a space that's shared by your family or your housemates, and it's going to be tough trying to negotiate with your grandmother on why you might have to move some piece of furniture around. And so if you don't want to get into it and you're just going to have to say, what, this is as good as it's going to get, that's totally fine. But you should still know the skills of setting up your space. Okay, so in terms of our class, I'm not going to dock points for not having set up your set, but I do want all of you to think about it in some sense, because if you are interested in moving forward in media performance, it would be worth your time to always consider the space that you are recording in. So I have some examples that I wanted to show you guys. So first of all, I want to start with John Oliver. I also posted a link to the John Oliver segment from this past weekend because I think that it's important that you guys watch it. He addresses the fact that he is recording his show at home, and he talks about some of the challenges that he's facing. But I also want to show you the comparison between what his studio looks like in the HBO studio where he records his show every week on Sunday, and his space that he created for himself at home, right? So one thing that you'll notice right away is the image on the left, his HBO studio, has this dynamic background that's supposed to make it look like he has a giant window behind him that looks out onto a cityscape. Now, it's very likely that that is not real, that might be a digitally projected video that is behind him, and it might even be pulling source footage from an actual camera that looks at the city live, but it's doubtful that he has a giant window behind him because windows do not make good acoustics. And the image on the right, he is at home, and as you can see, he opted to just have a simple background. Now, it's very possible that somebody from his staff dropped off a background that he was able to put up on his own. But it doesn't really matter. The point is he could have just as easily taken a piece of paper and hung it up behind himself. He could have just as easily taken a tarp or a bed sheet and hung it up behind himself. So it's not a huge deal. He just went with a simple blank slate because a simple, well-lit blank slate is going to look more professional than the stucco on your wall, for example. So besides that, you can see that he's still definitely engaging in using good lighting. He still has essentially the same set where it's just him and a table. He is sitting to our right, so to his left a little bit, because he knows he's going to have an over-the-shoulder image appearing post-edit. And you'll notice that there's even a banner along the left side of the screen that also gets edited in. So as much as possible, John Oliver is attempting to maintain continuity between his show in the studio and his show at home. And he's doing it in a very simple way. I also want to draw attention to a couple of other facts. So, one is take a look at his face and the lighting and the way that the lighting is affecting his face, right? So, in the studio, you'll notice that it's actually slightly more dim lighting. And honestly, it's actually not doing him a lot of favors because the lighting at his home is a little bit brighter. And you could argue that he's a little bit blown out, but at the same time, you'll notice that his forehead wrinkles are a little bit more smoothed over. And so this is a way that you can use lighting to play with making your skin tone look better. He's also got a simple suit on and he has a simple tie on. He's not doing anything extra. So it's just some thoughts. I even tried to make sure that I lined up the shots where he had similar hand positions. One note that I will make that I didn't capture in the frame is that because he was sitting so far to the left of his camera, that periodically when he was gesticulating with his hands, he actually cut off his arm a little bit. And that was really annoying for me to see because I'm a media professional. I don't know if a normal audience member would have paid attention to something like that. He sits a little bit more to the right in his studio, and that's just something worth noting. So if you rehearse on camera and you notice that you're doing that, maybe put a marker down where your chair should be positioned or where you should be positioned to help you stay in your frame, since there's no camera operator or floor manager to let you know or to adjust on your behalf. So John Oliver had to set up his own camera. He had to set up his own background. He had to set up his own lighting. He did his own makeup, and he looks fantastic. Next, I wanted to show you some examples from various esports streamers. Now, this is two players who are playing and streaming as they play. One, you'll notice, digitally projected his game in the background behind himself. And he's wearing a headset so he can better hear the game. And he's got a professional level microphone in front of him. And I would say that this actually looks pretty cool because I like that I can see him. And I assume that when he actually gets into playing the game, that maybe he will be minimized and I'll see more of him actually playing the game. The images to the left of our screen are also a player who is currently getting ready to play. He was waiting for his team members to join him. And you'll notice that he has an inset in the game where you can see him in his little home space. And his space is not set up very well. The lighting is pretty awful. You can kind of see some of his computer console. You can see the window, the blinds are messy. It's pretty distracting. So looking at these images, I can tell that one of these streamers intends to be watched as he's playing, and one of these streamers doesn't think that his audience is going to be looking at him as he's playing. And I just wanted to bring this to your attention because aesthetics do matter, and the way that you set up your shots does matter. And even though they both have professional headsets and they both have professional microphones set up, one has obviously put just the tiniest bit more effort into what he looks like on camera, and that makes a difference. Okay, so moving from streaming into esports talk shows, here is an example of two different types of talk shows. Both of these came from a review of the best games of the decade. So both the talk show on the right with the two guys and the talk show on the left with three people were reviewing a lot of games. Now, just looking at these two images side by side, I want to ask you for a minute to reflect on which of these two talk shows might seem more legitimate to you. I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. Okay, so I'm hoping that you picked the image on the right as a slightly more legitimate talk show, somebody who obviously knows what they're talking about. And part of the reason is going back to what I mentioned before, which is that this streamer chose to set up their background to establish their authority a little bit. Now, it looks really messy and very cluttered. And I would probably tone it down if I were him. I would remove some of the extemporaneous items. However, it is really good to see that he obviously likes Star Wars. He obviously likes, let's see, The Witcher and some classic games. I'm seeing a Princess Leia, I'm seeing a Yoda, I'm seeing all kinds of stuff. And so that tells me automatically that I can probably trust this person's opinion because they've obviously made it a career of collecting and being involved in the gaming industry and being a gaming consumer. Whereas in the two guys on the right are two guys that are just kind of hanging out in front of a brick wall. It's not necessarily bad, but they didn't take the opportunity to establish their authority on the subject by having a cool background. And that's neither here nor there. You can make the choice to have a simple background versus a cluttered background. It just depends on really what you're trying to convey to your audience. However, one thing that I will note that both of the streamers did, which I think is smart, is they're both wearing also clothing that definitely showcases that they are into video games and into esports and into gaming culture. So if you are choosing to run your YouTube channel this semester, focusing on something that you can get clothing for, like video games, and or I should say, if you already have stuff like that, then that's fantastic. I don't think you need to spend a lot of money investing in items for your YouTube channels for this semester. I definitely don't want to encourage anybody to go outside unnecessarily or order from Amazon unnecessarily. So just try your best to use whatever you have available in your home already. And like I said, you can just simply use these items to either build authority or just show your audience that you really know what you're talking about. Okay. Another major type of video that you can be doing is a makeup tutorial, or really any kind of tutorial. And I specifically picked these two women because one is in an extremely well lit set, and the other one is in a slightly less well lit set. And so the woman on our right, she is I pulled this image from a showcase of her talking about a full face of makeup that, using makeup that was sent to her. And there's nothing wrong with her set. She seems to be standing in front of a white wall. And she has probably some natural lighting in the room. And then she might have gotten one or two additional lights set up. If you look at the pupils of her eyes, you can see that there might be some lights set up around her. However, the woman on the left, you can very clearly tell that there is a full professional lighting kit in the room with her. And one of the ways that you can tell, again, is by looking at the pupil of her eyes and seeing all of the lights being reflected back. But also you can just tell from the quality of the lighting. And we're going to talk about lighting a little bit more later, but I do want you to sort of take in these two images and see how maybe one or two additional lights can make a huge difference. And again, I also want to point out the set, right? So the woman on the right is standing just in front of a white wall, and the woman on the left took the time to set her set up a little bit. It's still a white background, but we also see that there's a mirror and there's an image. If you look closely at the image, far to her left or right, I don't know, you guys, I'm dyslexic. But anyway, you see right here, this picture right here, you can see the makeup brushes, and then over here she set up a little vase with probably some fake flowers. You know what? She's talking about makeup and she's doing a makeup tutorial. So it absolutely makes sense to have some of these things in the background. It helps build authority. It helps me know that she takes her makeup very seriously and she talks about makeup a lot and she knows a lot about makeup. Again, I'm sorry about the email sounds. I will make a note to turn my email off next time I record. Great. And then the last thing I wanted to touch base on and show you guys as an example is the news and what's currently going on with the news. And so what I have for you are these two separate news interviews that are being conducted by somebody who I believe is at home. And then they are interviewing somebody who is also at home. So both of the interviewers are sitting to the left of the image when we're looking at it. And so the man on the leftmost image, I think that that's a virtual background behind him using something like Zoom. And if you were to watch the video, you would notice that when he's listening to Senator Klobuchar speak, he actually looks down, which tells me that he might be looking at her image on his computer. And at the same time, the ladies on the right of our screen, you can tell that they're both at home. The interviewer on the left side over here is sitting in front of what looks like her built-in cabinets at home, and she was very smart. She's on NBC News Now, and so what she did is she pulled up the NBC News Now logo just on her television. But now every time we cut to a full image of her, we're going to see the NBC News Now logo behind her. And that's a really simple, easy way to include branding if you need to. The background is white. It's not too cluttered. There's just a handful of things. She put in a little Buddha statue, and she's got some books laid out, and that tells us that she's probably intelligent and worldly. And then she's conducting an interview with a person who's definitely at home. And again, I want to bring your attention to the lighting and the set, right? So here we have a virtual set and okay lighting. And Senator Klobuchar is obviously in her home office. And again, you can tell just natural lighting and maybe one light in front of Senator Klobuchar, where here we have a lady who is in her room, in a bedroom, in her house, and the lighting is not fantastic. So it's very simple to establish your set and pick a room with good lighting when you are conducting an interview, when you're going to be on camera. So just some thoughts to consider. Looking at all of these images, I want all of you to internalize that all of you are so close to having the exact same materials, the exact same supplies as professionals in our field. And so you can be also creating the same level of content as NBC News. And, on the one hand, that's a commentary on NBC News, and that most news stations, most television production studios were not prepared for something like this. And then I really want to drive the point home that if you, as a media performer, as somebody who goes in front of the camera and someone who brings us the news on TV, if you are somebody who does not know how to set up lighting, does not know how to set up a camera, does not know how to frame your shot, you are going to have a hard time in the future in situations like this. But if you do know how to write the news and how to edit the news and how to set up the lighting and how to set up your camera and how to frame your shots, you're going to be much more successful. And that is going to make a huge difference if we ever have another situation like this where you are forced to create the news from home. So we've talked about lighting a lot, and in our studio, it is hung on our behalf, and we have very little to do with the lighting. But at home, you're going to have to really think about it. And so I have this chart diagram for you of what three-point lighting looks like. We use three-point lighting. It's just the absolute standard in news production and filmmaking. You want one backlight, and you don't want it directly behind you, obviously. You want it off to the side a little bit because that backlight is going to fill in the space so that you don't have a giant shadow behind you. You want one side light and one key or main light. And what these two lights do is they cancel each other out a little bit. So you don't have any massive cast shadows on your face from your nose or your cheeks or your chin or your hair or anything like that. So anyone can make a 3-point lighting system happen at home with a simple desk light and a simple larger light behind you, and then maybe some natural lighting that can work as your main or key light. That is enough for you to be able to accomplish this 3-point lighting set. You want to make sure that you're using full and bright lights, and you also want to consider whether or not you want to use cool or warm lighting. And when I say that, I'm sure all of you understand that I mean that we're really talking about the difference between fluorescent and non-fluorescent lighting. Warm light is good, and it can make you look more human sometimes, because definitely cooler lighting washes out some of the pinks and some of the yellows from our skin. And so it's something worth considering, because you obviously want to still look good when you are on camera. But cooler lighting looks more professional. So try both. If you have the lights in your house to do it, bring them to your set that you have set up and test out what the different lights look like. Ask if you have anybody at home that can help you, ask them to turn lights on and off so that you can play around with what it looks like. If you don't have that, try and turn some lights on, sit down, look at yourself on camera, and then, maybe take a screenshot so that you can compare. And like I said, you can use almost any kind of lights, right? You can use your larger overhead lights. You can use the big standing lamps. You can use little desk lamps. You can even use the flashlight on your phone if you are in a real pinch. Some other things that you can consider is you can hang some white pillowcases or some white bed sheets around the space to help reflect light to make it seem fuller. You can try and get some aluminum and put some aluminum on an umbrella, and you, by doing that, will create a reflector, which can also help fill the space. So, this is going to be some, arts and crafts meets Becca, but it's definitely worth the effort, because the difference is going to be like these two ladies. One of them is using reflectors and one of them is not, and that is something that, depending on what you're doing with your channel, is worth considering. The next thing I wanted to talk about is video equipment. Okay, so some of you maybe just have your cell phone camera, and that is plenty. And some of you maybe have a webcam on your laptop or your home computer, and that is also plenty. If you have a DSLR, you are welcome to use it. If you have a professional camera at home, you are welcome to use it. I am not going to be looking at the quality of the video that you record on, right? So if you record on your simple laptop webcam, that is fine. However, if you wanted to invest in some equipment moving forward, I have posted on iLearn a URL to a website that will give you sort of like the budget options on a good camera. And then moving forward after this slide, we'll be talking about audio equipment. It also offers some lighting and audio equipment that you can use. And it's all pretty light on the budget. So maybe think about, in lieu of having to buy a textbook for this class, think about, and then also potentially having some of your lab fees hopefully refunded, maybe think about investing. If this is something that you want to do seriously, I definitely recommend investing in some camera equipment. And in addition to camera equipment, you might want to consider getting a tripod or a Steadicam. So a Steadicam is going to be great if you have a channel where you're going to be moving around. If you're going to be walking through your house, or if you're going to be out in your backyard or in your front yard, but definitely still socially distanced from everybody by at least 6 feet, a Steadicam is great because you hold it in your hand and it keeps your phone steady. These Steadicams are used on film sets, and the one that you see in the picture here has just been adapted to hold a cell phone, but obviously you can get the Steadicam for a DSLR if you needed to as well. The next option that I really recommend, and a very good budgetary option, is a Gorilla tripod. These Gorilla tripods are fantastic because these legs are completely bendable into any shape, and all of them come with a level attached, so you always know that your camera is level. And these Gorilla tripods come for DSLRs. They're also available for cell phones. They're also available for even webcams. So that is also something to consider. A really great thing about the Gorilla tripod is it's also extremely portable because it's very small. So you can grip it onto almost anything. If you have a lamp in your house and you want to attach your cell phone to the lamp so that you can have good lighting while you are recording your video, then a Gorilla tripod is for you because you can wrap the legs of the Gorilla tripod around the lamp post. And then finally, you can also just invest in a regular standard tripod. Although if I was being completely honest, I would still opt for a Gorilla tripod and a Steadicam, and have that be in my toolkit if I was a filmmaker at home. Okay, so the next element we're going to talk about is audio equipment. So there's not a lot I can say about audio equipment. You're going to be basically limited to your computer microphone, a headset microphone if you use a headset. You could get a low-grade professional microphone, and you can't see me doing my air quotes, but I'm doing my air quotes around the word professional. There are some lower quality microphones that you can order off of Amazon, and then obviously there's professional grade microphones. I don't think that it's going to make a huge difference. If you feel like you are okay with the quality of the audio you're hearing right now, that is the quality of my laptop's audio. So it's definitely not a huge deal if you wanted to, if you just wanted to use your computer microphone. The next step up from a computer microphone is if you wanted to get like a headset. Given that you're in a bunch of Zoom meetings because of classes right now, it might be worth investing in a good pair of headphones that comes with a microphone attached, similar to what we were using in our studio space when we were recording as headsets for the floor manager and the director and the assistant director. It's totally not mandatory, and it's totally not anything I expect you to spend money on now at this point in the semester. But if this is something that you are interested in doing, if you are using this as your opportunity to finally start streaming as a video game or esports streamer, then this might be a good opportunity to finally invest in a good headset. And they're going to be looking at a price point of somewhere between $25 to $250 for a good headset. So, definitely do your research. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to buy. And the same situation is true for the low grade professional microphone and for a professional microphone. You can definitely invest in one, and some of them are going to be not that expensive and some of them are going to be more expensive. I think that the students in our class with some amount of audio prowess would probably be able to help you make a decision better than I will. All I can tell you really is that as far as doing a video podcast is concerned, I don't think that audio makes a huge impact. But I also know at least 4 people off the top of my head that would tell me that I am extremely wrong. So, whatever you choose to decide to do with your audio, know that obviously if you invest money in better audio equipment, you will have better quality audio. But besides that, it's really up to you what you want to do with that. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is framing and aesthetics. Now, here's the deal. I'm not going to show you guys this video in here. I'm going to post the link to this video on iLearn, and you can go and watch it if you need a refresher on how to frame a video. The basic 3 things that I really want all of you to consider are the rule of thirds, lead room, and headroom. Okay, so this is an 8-minute video, or like an 8.5-minute video, and is definitely worth a watch if any of the 3 things that I just said sound mysterious to you. But the rule of thirds is pretty simple. You can see in the picture here in front of us that the screen has been split up into 9 boxes. And the general idea is that you want your subject to align with these inside lines, right? If you want a straight head-on shot, you're going to have your subject between these 2 lines. If you want something slightly off center, you're going to want to line it up with one of these lines, etc. So definitely consider the rule of thirds. Lead room, sometimes in our department we also call it nose room, right? It's the idea that as a motion vector, you don't want your face to be too close to the edge of the screen looking off screen. It's very off-putting to see that, and confusing. So do consider how your face is being framed by the camera when you set up your shots. And also obviously your headroom. So if you go back and you look at the portion where we're talking about John Oliver, he did a pretty good job of making sure that there's just enough space for his head, so it doesn't look like he's cramped into a tiny frame. This video goes on to talk about 6 different elements, not just 3. So like I said, I'll post the link on YouTube or on iLearn, and I want those of you who need to take some time and go over the aesthetics. Why is this important? Because we're all media performance students, and you are studying how to best be a media performer and a media creator. And basic media aesthetics is something that you are learning how to do in school. And yes, it's possible to learn outside of school, but this is going to be definitely what separates you from an amateur moving forward. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about the different platforms that you're going to come across as options for streaming your videos. So we, for this class, are going to be using YouTube. And my hope is that by forcing you to upload your videos to YouTube, you're also going to learn about some of the features that YouTube offers, like also the ability to stream your videos live. And YouTube has a studio that you can use within YouTube. So once you've uploaded your video, you can do some basic editing inside of YouTube. You can add titles, you can add credits, you can add lower thirds, you can make jump cuts, you can do fades. It's great. And you know, is it competitive to Adobe Premiere? No. Is it competitive to Final Cut? No. But is it competitive with you know, iMovie? Yes, probably. So it is something that I want all of you to learn and to be able to use. Once you have your video up on YouTube, you can also cross-post that video. You can post it on Instagram, you can post it on Twitter, you can post it on Facebook, you can post it on Snapchat, and that's fantastic. But I also want all of you to consider the fact that all of these platforms offer you live video. So if at some point in the future you wanted to record a live video, then stream a live video, then in that case, I would recommend that you do some research and compare the different platforms. One of the first things that you should be asking yourself is, what kind of audience am I trying to reach, right? So in layman's terms, you can say that Facebook is typically for people over the age of 40. That's the average age of the user. Instagram is definitely a millennial platform. You're going to come across people who are in their early 30s up until their mid to late 40s, potentially. So, you know, that's going to be your millennial demographic. Twitter kind of spans a lot of different age groups depending on what hashtags you post with and what kind of outreach you have. Twitch is definitely going to be a younger audience. And honestly, I don't even know who uses Snapchat anymore, but they're probably younger than me. So I'm going to guess that it's probably going to be the Gen Z people are going to be on Snapchat. And the reason why it's important to know those demographics is because depending on what your channel is about, you're going to want to be reaching out to different groups of people. And you know, if you have a channel about esports, it's probably going to be beneficial to you to stream on Twitch directly. If you have a channel that talks about esports, and you want to stream live, but you also want to record video, it's up to you, you know, whether or not you want to use YouTube or if you want to use Twitch, etc. So the best way to learn about a platform is to spend some time on it, and to read some articles about it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is I know that as social media evolves, we're going to see things like Facebook and Twitter die off, and maybe even YouTube and some days Instagram. They're going to go through their life cycle and then they're going to end. And we're going to start seeing the rise of new social media platforms, right? Just like MySpace died and oh gosh, what was the name of that video? It was the precursor to TikTok. Anyway, just like MySpace died out and TikTok and Snapchat rose up, you're going to be looking at new platforms entering the space. Now, you don't have to like those platforms, but you do need to know how to use those platforms, because the audience that you are trying to reach is going to be on those platforms. And whether or not you like to use it personally is irrelevant. If you are in media and you are trying to reach an audience, then you need to know how to best reach them. And that means learning about new platforms. So if you're looking at these icons in front of you and you're saying, I don't know how to use any of these, if you want to continue on in media production, it is imperative that you learn about social media and just know how to use it without having a judgment about it. Okay, that is our lecture for this week. I think it clocked in at just under an hour, and I hope that it wasn't too long or too rambly, and hopefully everything made sense. Please make sure you're taking care of yourselves. Please make sure that you are practicing self-care, and go ahead and reach out to me if you need any assistance at all. I'm available via email, and if you need to talk to somebody, I'm also available via Zoom meeting almost anytime. I just want to make sure that you are all taking care of yourselves and making it emotionally, mentally, physically through this very strange period of time. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I miss seeing all of you in person, and I miss teaching the class face-to-face, but hopefully you are still getting what you need from the class. So if at any point you feel like I could be doing more, let me know. All right. Have a good week, guys. Bye.